Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Chef Edouardo Jordan. I'm going to give a few minutes before we start to give some more people some time to log in, and then we'll get started. Hope everyone having a beautiful day today. And if you can't hear me or something's weird, send us a comment right now so that we can try to fix any issues if we have any. Alright gang, we're gonna start in like 1 minute, alright? Anyone out there, tell me where you from. Give us a shout. We're in Seattle right now, and always. Any Seattle in the house? Florida? Arkansas? Alright gang, here we go. We're gonna start it up. My name is Chef Edouardo Jordan. I am the chef of June Baby Restaurant, Celery Restaurant, and Lucinda Grain Bar here in Seattle, Washington. Normally sunny during this time of the year, but we do have the wildfires going on in Oregon and in California, and that smoke is pushing up our way. We're being positive as possible. And to bring joy, what am I doing? I'm cooking food and food that I love cooking. And we're gonna do one of my family's favorite dishes, I guess like one of our traditional dishes. It's called rice, a Purloo rice. It's a kind of a take on the classic pilaf rice. And if you even go further back to the African descents, the African origin of this dish, you can easily relate its origin to the jollof rice in West Africa, the Senegal and Nigerian rice dish that became so popular with the Africans that were forced to come over here through the transatlantic African slave trade. And so this is one of the dishes that we actually feature on June Baby's menu for our Southern rice dish. We rotate a Southern rice either weekly or even sometimes monthly, depending on like how popular a rice dish is. And we just kind of tell the story of rice, because rice had a very significant role in the building up of America. Africans were brought over for their knowledge, their insight into agriculture, and that became like tubers, yams, leafy greens, the collard greens that were also brought over to help grow rice. And rice was that cash crop. It was that golden ticket that a lot of plantation owners made a lot of money off the backs and knowledge of African slaves. And a lot of the slaves created these or tended the fields of these rice farms in South Carolina and the coast of Georgia, all the way to Florida, and they created a fortune for a lot of parts of America and fed a lot of America. So rice is the building blocks of America, and the knowledge of our African descendants and ancestors and play a big part into like the foods that we eat now, believe it or not. And so, all of these dishes, jollof rice, pilaf rice, Purloo rice, were all influenced from, various aspects of migration and the intertwining of various races and cultures, from the Spanish influence to German influence to the African influence to other European influences that kind of make their way into rice dishes. And so my grandmother used to make this dish, Purloo rice. I kind of saw it as a pilaf, but she didn't have all the vegetables in it. It was a very, very simple one-pot dish, and that's kind of the origin of the jollof rice. It's a one-pot dish, normally having some type of tomato product in there, could be based on seafood or some type of proteins, all cooked together in one pot. And what I wanted to do is take the essence of my grandmother's dish, because she never shared recipes. But I got the origin and the essence of her dish, and I enhanced it to the best of my ability to make something that tastes really good to me and becomes a full meal, because it has everything in there to satisfy you during dinner. So the ingredients that I'm going to feature today, and so proud to feature, is Ralston's Family Farm Jasmine rice. This is a very aromatic rice. They're based in Arkansas. One of my farmers that I featured at June Baby. And sorry, I got my dog here. We're at home. We're still doing the COVID life, so you get a real me right now. So we feature a lot of Ralston Family Farms rice at the restaurant, particularly the purple rice. They also have a beautiful aromatic jasmine rice, basmati rice, a long grain rice, and also brown rices in those same formats. We cook extensively with the purple and the jasmine rice because I love the texture. I love the flavor. It has some bite to it without overcooking. You got some of these rice that just kind of disintegrate or too starchy, or there's something going on with them, and you have to have like different cooking techniques. This is a rice that works well for me. I love to cook with it at home, and I love definitely to cook with it in the restaurant. And they also have a beautiful blend of rice, their rice blend. So please look into Ralston Family Farm website, www.ralstonfamilyfarm.com, and check out all the goodies that they have. And as I stated, we're going to be featuring their jasmine rice today, and the recipe is actually going to be in the website, and you can go to the website, visit and look for Purloo rice featuring me, and you'll get the exact recipe. And so cooking at home, I kind of wing things. I kind of cook with what I have, and my Purloo rice would change depending on like what I have available. If I had bell peppers, if I had onions and mushrooms and things of that nature. But the basis for me is typically there's going to be some type of chicken in there, because that's how my grandmother used to do it. And so these are the ingredients that we're going to be working with today. We have some bacon. This is house smoked bacon. And what we do is we cure the bacon, salt, sugar, and then we smoke it. And then I'm able to just sit on this for months. I'll freeze the slab and then cut off pieces that I need and work with it. So this is big slab bacon, better than your grocery store bacon. A yellow onion here. I love yellow onions. They're a little bit sweeter. Then your red onion or your typical white onion, I love them. So I typically focus on the yellow onion. I got some button mushrooms. You can use any type of mushrooms you want. You don't really have to be super fancy. Don't go out and get chanterelles and morels and boletes, king boletes. Button mushrooms work. We're just going for flavor, and they're going to get chopped down, as you'll see in a little bit. Some Marzano tomatoes. I took a can of tomatoes, I crushed them. If you're sitting on an abundance of tomatoes right now because you have a garden, take those tomatoes, chop them down in a food processor, and get a little bit of puree. You don't have to worry about going super fine because we do want a little bit of texture. I then have some Cajun seasoning. You can purchase some Cajun seasoning from JuneBabySeattle.com. We make our own. This is what I'm featuring, our Cajun seasoning. So yummy. If you don't have the opportunity to get our Cajun seasoning, you can definitely use any other commercial Cajun seasoning you like, or you can make your own. Pretty simple, pretty easy, and you'll have a stock for your own. Got some fortified chicken stock, which we made. So I took some chicken legs, and I'm using dark meat. You can use light meat, white meat if you desire, but I like dark meat because it's resilient, and I'm able to technically cook it twice. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I did. So I took some dark leg quarters, and then made a chicken stock out of it. Just pour water over it, simmer it down till the chicken is half cooked. Pull the chicken out, and then I reduced it down. And so I have my chicken stock, and then I have some celery, and then some herbs from my garden. You can use dry herbs. Actually, the recipe that you guys are going to see on the website, Ralston Family Farm, It's gonna have dry oregano. I have some fresh oregano from my garden, so I'm gonna substitute this. And so I always tell people, like, when you're cooking, and definitely cooking at home, there's a foundation. A recipe is a foundation. You may not have all of those ingredients on hand, which we call like the mise en place, chopping it down, making sure that everything is in order in the kitchen. And sometimes things don't show up. Sometimes we have to improvise. And so you need to do the same thing in the kitchen if you don't have something. And so that's what I tell people, you know, check your inventory, check your stock. If something is not working for you, say you're a vegetarian and this recipe has chicken, go all mushroom and go with mushroom stocks. Go with vegetable and some vegetable stock. And you can sub in and have fun, and then, you know, it's adapted for you now. But this is just a foundation recipe, and so you can build as you desire. So I'm going to start getting this going. I'm actually going to cook on an induction burner so you can actually see me. Hopefully the fan isn't too loud, but I'm cranking the heat up. And so I'm going to get my ingredients in order, mise en place. So I'm going to start with my onion, and I'm going to chop it down into small dice. You're going to need roughly like a half of an onion. So what I like to do is clean off the bottom without taking the entire root out. I just want to make sure there's no dirt, extra dirt or anything that's going to contaminate. I clip the top here. Go right down the half. Split. We're only going to use and need only half of this onion. This is a large recipe that you're getting on the website. So if you desire, you can definitely split this recipe in half. It's built definitely for a big family or a party that you can feed about 10 people. So if you're a family of 2 or 3 and want some leftovers, definitely split this recipe in half. So I'm going to go in and we're going to do about a medium to small dice on the onion. So I'm just slicing through. I'm protecting my hands, kind of clawing it and pressing down on the onion, and then I'm just doing a little bit of wiggle. You don't have to worry about like going in there fast. You know, we're not trying to be commando and slicing down the forks or anything. Slow and sure, and make sure you protect yourself. Going in for the claw again. This way, if you're slicing and you make a mistake, you're not hitting much. You may get a little bit of clip of that finger, but you're not taking a fingernail off. You're not taking a full finger. So protect yourself when you're cutting. Sharp knife is another one. I'm going in next. Quick slice. Okay, once I have it there, I'm going to come back and make a little dice. I'm going to clean my board and kind of work clean as possible. And I'm going in, slicing down. Okay, I'm going to move my shrimp to the side. So I got my onions, little dice here. Got my bacon, and you can be as aggressive as you desire. I have skin on, so I'm going to definitely take the skin off. You don't want to be cooking with the skin unless you're braising this bacon down and softening that skin. I'm using, this is probably like a 40 to 50% fat bacon. As you can see, we're using full pork bellies when we're making this bacon. So if you want a fattier bacon, go for it. If you want a meatier bacon, go for it too. That's up to you. I'm just going to do some small dices, similar size to the onion on the bacon. And feel free to ask me any questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, and kind of go from there. So turning the bacon over, giving a quick dice on that. And now I have my pan preheating because I'm going to kind of work and be ready. 2 celery stems. So I'm splitting in half. I'm taking the back out. I'm going to actually use the back too, but I just wanted to work with something that's more uniform. And the easiest way I like to dice bacon is kind of like just rolling it and cutting it. So I roll it on the side. I got my little plank, and then cut a strip. Same thing again. And then check this side. And I have like little strips now. Okay, same thing again. Rolled it on this side, cut it off, rolled it down, cut it down, split that. I have little strips. And then I come back and I do the same thing to this, but now I have a lot more area to work with, so it's coming down. And nothing needs to be perfect. we're not in a fine dining restaurant. Everything needs to be extremely uniform. But what you want to work on is that they're similar size, because you want these items to cook at the same time, roughly the same temperature. So that means that they'll be cooked at the same time and have the same texture. So everything is roughly the same size. Okay, same thing for the end pieces here. And once I get closest to the end, all the way to the root end, I'm going to discard that as trim. Okay, I'm going to move all of my ingredients over here to the side. And then I have these button mushrooms. I'm actually, like I said, like, you don't need to use a fancy mushroom. So I'm using a button mushroom, and I'm going to essentially chop these down. They're going to disappear into this rice, but they're going to bring me big flavor, that umami that we were looking for, you know, without adding. What my grandmother probably used to add was MSG and an accent salt. So we're bringing that naturally with these mushrooms. So just going to quickly slice in on these mushrooms. Like I said, I got my pan preheating. If you need a little bit more time to chop vegetables, don't rush it. Like, just wait for a little bit, and you can always reheat the pan once you got everything chopped down and ready. Okay, so I got my mushrooms sliced. I'm just gonna go back over them and chop them again. We actually want to make them to little crumbles, pretty much. If you're making this a big batch in the restaurant, we essentially just put these into a RoboCoupe or a food processor and chop them down. Okay, so then once I got them fairly small, I'm just gonna run my knife over it one more time, or twice. Okay, have my mushrooms ready here. Okay, and we're gonna start this cooking process. Like I said, this is a one pot. You know, like there's several techniques that you can do. You can go full in right over the stove top and slowly cook it, or there's a technique that you can also, once everything is in, water's boiling, you can slide this rice into the oven. So I'll quickly talk about those as I go through the process. Depends on how much time you have and what you want to work with and how you want to kind of babysit the pot. So we're going to start with a little bit of cooking oil, and we're using grapeseed oil. You can use like a canola oil or a vegetable oil, and that's just enough to kind of coat the bottom of that pan. Okay, and we're just going to bring this to just a nice little a little shear. You're going to see like the oil start to like move. You can start smelling it. We don't want to make it too hot, but we want to get a sizzle when we go in. Okay, I'm going onions in, followed right behind that with bacon. Okay, and we want this bacon to render while the onions are cooking. Okay, so we're giving this a little stir, and I'm using a pretty thick hard bottom pan. This is a Le Creuset, which you can use any kind of Dutch oven or a lidded cast iron. This also can work in a stainless steel pot, but I like to potentially like build that caramelization at the bottom. Definitely when this rice starts to cook on the stove top, you get that kind of like paella feel. So I love to use like these big thick bottom pots where it can get hot without like totally scorching. Okay, you'll see a little bit of color building up in here as we go. Okay. So cooking takes a little bit of time, but cooking shouldn't be hard. You know, if you properly plan it out, if you're working off of recipes, just kind of know what you're working with and understanding like the time process. Some things take a little bit longer to cook. If you're braising, you know, if you're cutting the onions larger, they're going to take a little bit of time. So it's all about that time then and how things go into the pot. I like to season in layers. So what I'm going to do is just kind of add a little bit of salt in here. That's going to help draw out some of the liquid from the onions and bring it back to the pan that we can start working on that caramelization. Did we get any shout outs of where people are from who are viewing today?
Miss Alzadia.
Yeah, we got Texas in the house.
Yes.
Texas in the house. California in the house. All right. So you can hear the pan is starting to build back up. The temperature is building back up. You can hear the changes in sound. When I'm cooking, I'm using my eyes, I'm using my ears, and I'm using my smell, my nose, to tell me how things are performing. And so if something is cooking too fast, I can hear it because it's sizzling, it's blistering, it's popping. So turn it down a little bit. If it's not doing anything, because you can see it's not moving, turn it up a little bit. You want to play around with that knob. You know, we don't want it just on like blazing hell going at 900 degrees, and we don't want it at 2 degrees because things don't get done either. And if you got it too high, you're going to be starting over. So we're working on a little bit of caramelization. This is that moment that you can go change the channel or go change the radio station, but you don't want to go too far because it will burn. So think about like 1 minute. What can I do in 1 minute? I don't know. Check your text message, check Instagram, post this. That's what we do these days, right? We don't even watch the news anymore. We just like on our social media. So thank you for joining us on social media and viewing this cooking demonstration with one of the greatest rice in the world, Ralston Family Farm. And we're featuring the Jasmine rice. So, all right. So I got my onions. I got my bacon. It's rendering. It's been cooking about a minute or two. I'm going to now add my celery.
Got a Georgia and Virginia.
What was that?
It's Georgia and Virginia.
Georgia and Virginia in the house. What's up? So I added my celery. The celery is pretty hardy, but it cooks down pretty fast. So you need to be cautious of like, how soon you want to put things in. If you want some texture in this rice, like you want to speed up the whole process. If you want things to cook down and disappear into the rice, cook it a little bit longer. Add the rice in at a later stage, okay? Again, I said I season in layers. So a little bit of salt. I'm gonna add now my button mushrooms. And I'm going to start with some black pepper now. I had some salt in there. I got my onions, my bacon, my celery, my mushrooms. And one amazing thing about my grandmother's pilaf rice is that it was heavily laced with black pepper. Her dish was super simple. It was chicken cooked down with onions and bell peppers. Taking that chicken and that stock, adding in rice, a lot of black pepper, some extra seasoning, which she never really told us what it was. We can kind of improvise what it was. And then she laced it with a lot of black pepper. And so I freely tell you in the recipe to add black pepper generously. That's up to you. I'm going to add it in multiple layers because the black pepper is going to cook at different stages, okay? And perform a little bit different. I'm using somewhat of a coarse grade of black pepper as I grind in, and I might go a little bit finer at the end to bring in that little kind of spicy itch, but not really heat. And so you see that color, that little bit of color that's starting to form at the bottom of that pan. That's what we want. And as these liquids start to release from the pan, we're going to use those to kind of help release that caramelization that's happening and bring that sugar right back into the vegetables. So that's what's bringing flavor. It's not just like boiling vegetables here. We're actually coaxing out flavor when we're cooking here. Okay. Now this is going beautiful. Anybody got any stories of their Purloo rice or Jollof rice or pilaf rice that they want to share? Remembering grandmama and mama and Auntie Sally Mae. I still owe her a lot of money, Auntie Sally Mae. I promise you I'm going to pay you. I promise you. Alright, so these vegetables are going. Alright, let's look at me a little bit. Don't just look at these vegetables. Hey! Alright guys, so I got my vegetables cooking. I got that bacon in there. That bacon's also bringing a little bit of smoky notes. I like that. If you don't like smoky notes, if you don't like pork, don't add it in there, okay? Like I said, cook from the hip, have fun. That's what grandma did, right? So I'm adding my rice, and what I'm going to do now, I'm adding the rice while things are still cooking and still have some texture, but I'm technically toasting this rice to also coax out that aromatic notes that this rice is so famous for. So I'm adding in about almost a cup and a half of rice here. And I'm going to give it a stir. And the natural starches from the rice is going to want to start sticking to the bottom of the pan. So you need to be very cautious now that you're stirring and not walking away and thinking that you can go play on the social media while your rice over here, you think your rice is cooking. It's really cooking now. So you might get some popping of rice, and you might get a little bit of sticking. Don't worry about that. We're going to release it with some more liquids, okay? With some liquids, okay? So get in there and stir it. You're going to see some caramelization going. Moving there, you see that? How everything is starting to stick? That's why I'm using that thick bottom pan, because I'm not afraid yet, okay? I am afraid when it starts getting really black, okay? So I'm going to keep stirring and toasting that rice, and you can really see like the rice now starting to get fully coated with that oils and the flavors of these vegetables, okay? So I'm starting to build up a little bit more caramelization, and now I'm going to add in my tomato puree here. Give that a stir to help release some of those caramelization that's going on at the bottom. And as you see, like, I'm not heavy like a jambalaya rice and some of the red rices of the South. This is just for a little bit of flavor. And I would say, like, this is one of the significant differences for me with the Purloo rice is that, like, it's not heavily tomato. You don't actually need to add tomatoes if you don't desire. But I did, because I love the flavor of tomato and the acid levels that it brings without actually needing to add like vinegar or any other acids. So from there, I'm going to add in my Cajun seasoning, and this has a little bit of spice to it. So I like a little bit of kick in my vegetables. So a little bit of cayenne is in our Cajun seasoning.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, what's the question?
You said your grandmother added green peppers. When would you add those in the process?
So, yeah, the green peppers, you got to remember, like, are kind of soft, and they have a lot of water content. So I add them after the carrots. So somewhere around the same time, I'm going to add in my celery. And so I'm starting to get a lot of color here, and this is good for me. Again, you can see that. Can you see that? And that's going to kind of super release now once I add in my chicken stock. Okay. So yeah, bell peppers are, they have a lot of water content, as any vegetable do, but the water content in those bell peppers, they release extremely fast. And so I add them somewhere after the celery because of its water content. And that's a good question. So from here, I'm going to bring it to a boil, okay? I'm going to also add in a little bit more salt, and then another aggressive amount of black pepper, because I'm seasoning this rice. I want it to cook, and actually, like, the flavor totally gets into the rice, and not me just like have a finished rice and then I'm just trying to like dump salt on it. That's actually just coating the outside. I want that internal seasoning. And that's the thing about like Southerners. We know how to season our food for the good and the bad, but we do know how to season our food. And that's one of the biggest things that my family pride themselves on, is that like we make our food taste good. We oftentimes had to cook with some of the most underrated, the most inferior, quote unquote inferior items. The ham hocks, the chitlins, the neck bones and things of that nature that weren't like the prime items. It wasn't that beautiful fillet of beef. And so we had to make it taste good. And then we cooked with acid, we cooked with vegetables, we cooked with salt, we cooked with spices, and we made things taste really good. So I like to cook in layers, like I said, because I really want it to be inside, fully like immersed in that dish, okay? So I have my chicken here, and like I'm gonna walk through that chicken process again. Super simple. Buy some chicken from the store. break it down a little bit. If you're using the entire chicken, start with the dark meat and then add in the white meat closer to the end so you have this par cooked chicken. And so all I do is cover with water. I don't add any vegetables, I don't add any garlic, anything. All I want is chicken broth. And so cover with water, bring to a boil, turn down to a simmer, cook for about 40 minutes or so, pulling out the chicken in various layers. The dark meat goes in. After it's cooked, you can pull it out, add in the white meat. After it's cooked, pull it out, and then reduce that chicken stock down for a little bit. And that'll give you a super fortified chicken stock. And so roughly with a cup and a half of rice, you're gonna need about almost 3 cups of some type of liquid, mushroom stock, chicken stock, whatever you want to cook with. I'm cooking with chicken stock because I'm using chicken, okay? From there, I got that chicken. I got my rice. It's starting to come to a boil, and this is when the magic is happening. I can start to smell this. That rice is starting to cook. Remember, this chicken is par cooked already, okay? So we do not need to fully cook this chicken again. We want the flavor, which came from that chicken stock, and we want the texture and the feel of that chicken in there without fully overcooking this, okay? This rice is going to take about, let's say, 12 to 15 minutes to cook. So I now have had it cooking on a boil for about 1 to 2 minutes, and now I'm going to start thinking about dropping my chicken in, and I'm just going to start kind of pulling it off the bone a little bit and leaving that bone in there. My grandmother we used to go in there and fight for the bones. And so like even just like dropping it in there, this is a par cooked chicken drumstick right in there. We got the leg quarters here, and these are big quarters here. I'm just gonna kind of tear it in half, leave some of it on the bone, get it right in there. We got that little backbone there, right in there. Same thing again. And like I said, like if you want to make this rice dish, this Ralston family farm rice dish here into a vegetarian dish, like definitely just, you know, skip out on the chicken stock, skip out on the chicken, add mushrooms and mushroom stock, or go with a heavy vegetable laced dish and stick with vegetable stock and vegetables here. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of turn, and then from here, I'm going to put a lid on this rice and let it cook slowly and start to build on the bottom. You're going to get maybe a little bit of sticking depending on your pan, but this is going to just cook slowly for the next about 10 to 12 minutes, okay? Oh, I forgot to put my black pepper in there. I don't know if anyone noticed, but I'm going to add it in there now.
Have a couple more questions.
Yeah, give you some questions.
I love the jasmine aroma. Is this your favorite variety for this dish, or would you try their purple rice as a fun option?
So thank you for the question. So if you did not hear the question, they love, so I put a lot of black pepper in there, and it's purposely. I love the little spice that it's going to bring, a little bit of heat. So the question was, would I use another type of their rice for this dish? And the answer is yes. In the restaurant, we use the brown rice, we use the purple rice, and we've used it on various dishes that are very similar to this Purloo. It's not necessarily Purloo. We didn't follow this exact recipe, but similar dishes. But again, it's kind of what you have. For me, rice is rice as long as you cook it right. Some rice take a little bit longer, some rice a little bit shorter. With the heartier rices like the purple and the brown rice, it definitely takes a little bit longer. So your cooking process and time period is going to be a little bit different. With this jasmine rice, it's aromatic, but it's built to like totally bring in other flavors. And so this is a perfect dish that you can really get that chicken stock in there, that very meaty note from the mushrooms and the chicken right into that dish, okay? So this is at a simmer. I'm going to put a lid on it. And I talked about like 2 different cooking techniques that you can have. This can be right on the stove top. Cook slowly at a low simmer for the next 10 to 12 minutes, checking it periodically to make sure that's not totally sticking at the bottom. If you need to add a little bit more liquid. Or a very simple, easy way to do this is you now have your oven turned up to 400 degrees, preheated while this is coming to a boil and this whole process is happening. and you slide this right into the oven, and you can cook it again for that 10 to 12 minutes. Kind of like an oven baked rice, and it works perfect. What you're gonna find is that kind of everything rises to the top. So like either halfway or at the end, you're definitely gonna have to get it stirred in to make it fully incorporated. But the magic of this dish, as I talked about from the beginning, is that this is a one-pot dish. You know, the whole point is that you're cooking everything in one pot. And what my grandmother used to do is basically she'll start with her chicken stock, and then she'll start adding her ingredients in here in layers right into that same pot, and then use that stock to cook that rice to fully cook. And that's essentially what we're doing here. Is kind of replicating that classic recipe and techniques in the form of now what we do in the restaurant, and I incorporate that at home. And so you can follow these same techniques and processes to kind of still get that authentic dish and still have that flavor. Any other questions right now?
Yeah, so you mentioned cooking the dark and white meat of the chicken separately. Why is that?
So, like I said, the dark meat is resilient. I really like dark meat because it holds its moisture. It definitely has some fat, and it's big in flavor for me. And white meat, if you are familiar with it, and probably you should be, because most people have had chicken in this various format, white meat tends to overcook or dry out a lot faster than the dark meat. And so that's why I like it in this process, because I pre-cooked my chicken and I'm adding it back into here. If you want to just go into like an all cooked process, you're definitely working with time, but this way here allows me to kind of predict my timing so that I can add the chicken back in. And so if I was using both the white and the dark meat, at the 5-minute remaining mark, I probably fold into this my white meat chicken, the breast of the chicken. And you can use wings in here. You're gonna get more bones and everything, but you know it's a very fun dish. Then it's an interactive dish. You're getting in there and you're pulling chicken and bones and everything out. And that's how we used to eat back at home. Any other questions right now?
Not right now.
Awesome. So pretty simple dish. I actually got this started and done, so I'm gonna do a quick swap out and show you what it looks like finished. Okay. Voila. And so I've been busy and so this is the finished dish here. You know, again, like we use the tomato product in there, but this is not a jambalaya red. You know, it's just in there to get some flavor and bring in some acid. And as you see, like this is that one pot dish. And at this point, I'm gonna add in my next layer of black pepper, and this is when you can really have fun. You can be less aggressive or not.
How long do you think it took to cook?
This here, it took about 15 minutes on the stove top. From that boil, I turned it down to a simmer and put a lid on it, and it took about 12 minutes. And what you want to do is just like, you want to make sure that, you know, everyone's, you know, hand touch is a little bit different. So your burner might be a lot more aggressive than my burner, because I cooked it on my stove top. I did it on the induction burner to be more personable to you guys. So you want to make sure that you're not reducing that water too fast, so that liquid in there. So you want to open up that lid every now and then and just double check that you do have enough liquid in there to completely cook this rice. So if you need to add in like a quarter cup or a few more tablespoons of rice, that is perfect time to look like halfway in this cooking process to see how everything is cooking along.
How do you know when it's done?
How do I know when it's done? I taste, and I taste. One of the most important things that you're trying out your food throughout the entire cooking process. You know, you don't want to eat raw chicken, and you don't want to eat any raw products, but you want to check for texture. The water, this recipe is scaled out to perfection for you guys for the most part. Again, like depending on your cooking level and your heat, the water might cook down a lot faster at your home, or your elevation might be different. So the rice might cook a little bit different. But what I do is I go in and I taste it. I check for the bite of the rice, and what you don't want is that crunch of the rice. You want to be able to feel the texture of the rice. You don't want it to be mushy. You don't want it to technically be al dente, but you want to have that al dente kind of feel a little bit over al dente, where you know, it's all about how you like your rice. And you know, I like my rice to be loose and not have that crunch to it. So, and for me, this is perfect. I can actually taste like the caramelization. I got a little bit of the, oh yeah, a little bit of that that black pepper is there. It's fun. And at this point in time, like, I'm gonna add just a little bit more salt, and that's up to you at this point in time. If your salt level is a little bit higher or lower, that's on you. Season it up to how you like it and how your family like it, and kind of have fun. I'm gonna plate this up here so that we can enjoy. Now I'm making a mess. Give me some more questions, guys, before we get out of here. So a big shout out to Ralston Family Farm for their beautiful, delicious rice. I've been cooking with their rice for over 2 years now. I kind of fell in love with it off of just doing a little bit of searching and research. We feature rice from all around the country, from the Carolinas to Florida to Louisiana to California, various grains here in Washington State and Oregon State. And I fell in love when I researched Ralston Family Farm in Arkansas. I actually did like a cold call email to them. I'm like, I want to taste your rice because I haven't seen it. I didn't know about it before. They sent me a box of 2. This is over 2 years ago, and we've been cooking with this rice ever since. Really big flavor, cooks well, it has texture, it keeps its body. You're not going to have like that overcooked rice if you follow the instruction. Perfect to keep in your house and have a good quality family-owned rice that they've been making for generations. So we're gonna plate up some rice. Gonna have some breakfast now. And I'm gonna ask, do you have any more questions before we go? Any other questions? Alright, so here's my pilaf rice. I can finish it with some herbs.
Would you serve it with any other sides or maybe cornbread?
Oh, you just gave me all the ideas already. More sides and cornbread, yes. I mean, this is pretty much a complete meal. So, you know, for those college students, this will do, right? Like, this can be your meal for the next 2 or 3 days. If you want to make it a full, complete meal for the family, cornbread is definitely a great addition. If you want to serve it with other vegetables like roasted corn or asparagus, or even serve it next to like braised collard greens, it's endless option. Like, this can just be the center of the plate kind of dish, and then the options to add on here is endless. So up to you. Have fun with it. You know, make good food, support these local and small farmers, support tradition and classic dishes, bring back that history, guys. Make sure we share these stories with our kids and our families. We don't want to lose our tradition, and nor do we want anyone else to tell our story like the way we know how to tell our story. I'm going to ask for any last questions, and if we don't have any more, I want to thank everyone. We do have a question? Yeah.
How do you normally keep your white meat chicken from drying out when cooking with it in this manner?
Yeah, totally. So the best way to avoid overcooking the white meat is basically you need to use either a thermometer or have experience cooking. And you want to put it a little bit earlier. I think the USDA or the FDA or someone says that you need to cook the chicken to 165 degrees. I guarantee you that chicken is going to be overcooked. And you didn't hear this from me, but I guarantee you this chicken is going to be overcooked if you cook it to 165 degrees. So what you need to do is support and make sure you find sustainable, organic, or know where your chicken comes from, so that you can feel good about not going to 165 degrees and cooking that chicken. But I would say if I'm using a thermometer, I will pull my chicken at 120 degrees, because I know that I'm going to actually add it back into this pot at the finish, and it's going to carry over into that 145 to 150 degree range for that white meat. And that's what makes me feel comfortable about that 150 degree range, but you didn't hear that from me. Unless you're going into your local farm and find that chicken and eating it tonight. But that would be my suggestion for making sure that you don't overcook that chicken. Any other question? Again, thank you, Ralston Family Farm, for your support and bringing us together to make this demo, to actually tell some of my history, a dish that my grandmother used to serve. Super simple dish, extremely healthy and fulfilling. It fed the family, and I'm excited to feature it to you guys and also at the restaurant. Please go out there and support your local restaurants. We are in this pandemic and we're hit the hardest. My restaurants again are June Baby, Celery Restaurant, and Lucinda Grain Bar, all in Seattle. You can check us out on our website and Instagram. Please do like us. Also follow me, Chef Edouardo Jordan. I appreciate you guys. Eat some rice. Support your farmers. God bless. Be safe.